welcome to another episode of the G.I. Joe New News Review. I am David Allen, and it is my special privilege to announce my great friend and appreciator of all things G.I. Joe, Michael Charles Hill, or Charles Michael Hill, whichever you would prefer.
Yeah, I get to Charles Michael Hill a lot, but that's all right. I know the answer to it.
You have been the creator of, first let me say, the writer, author, editor, and producer on all kinds of different projects over the decades, but you mainly in this audience that we're going to be talking to, you're the creator of DevCon from Transformers, the creator of Captain Claymore, and what we're here to talk about, Cold Slither.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I know we've talked about this before. I think this is our third go around in the last year. It was a nutty throwaway idea. I pitched probably 5 or 6 stories. It was my very first G.I. Joe script, and that's the one. I think Flint was the story editor on.
Oh, Flint Dilley.
Yeah, and that's the one they went with, and it was the one that I had least developed. So
isn't that always the way?
Yeah. So it was like, oh crap! Now I have to write this thing, and so I just kind of ran with the nuttiness of it, and sort of made it up as I went along. But essentially, it was grounded in the Pied Piper story, and because I was not a fan of heavy metal music, I was making fun of heavy metal music.
So it was a sort of a spoof and homage in the same way, because you were homaging the Pied Piper and you were spoofing the rock genre, heavy band hair rock genre.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, that was my favorite music in the 80s. I don't look my age, but I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I like that music.
Well, I born in the 50s, sort of came of age, with music in the 60s. Starting with, I like almost everyone else my age, I saw the Beatles live first time they appeared on Ed Sullivan's show.
The first British invasion, as they call it.
Yeah. And so as the 60s progressed, I just fell in love with more and more of the music and, the direction that it took. And so I kind of, in a way, I'm kind of locked into that era as being, part of my rite of passage. Not to say there isn't plenty of other music I like. And and all these great clubs that having grown up, were on Sunset Strip, but I grew up in Vermont and I was only aware of them. And when I moved to Southern California in 71, some of them still existed, like the Whiskey A Go-Go, and you'd see similar acts there. But then it started to evolve into these big hair, heavy metal bands that were playing at all these clubs, and I was just not happy about it at all, and I didn't care for the music. Then, of course, I later, after I wrote the script, I found out that Joe Bacall, one of the owners of Sunbow, wanted me to write the song because I had pitched the idea for it. Now, when we were doing Gem, Sunbow had contracted a couple of people to write all the songs for the show. And so what you would do in a Gem episode is when you'd get to the scene where there was going to be a live concert or a music video or something, you would literally just write in, play song here. So that's what I did in my script. And when Joe saw it, he goes, "Oh, I'm not going to pay somebody to write the song. This was your idea. You have to write the song." So this was like a Friday afternoon. So went home Friday night. Over the weekend, I wrote the song. And my intention was to write a really bad heavy metal song. And unbeknownst to me, until a little over a year ago, I failed epically. I had no idea that the show and the song had become fan favorites.
Wow. Yeah, because you were kind of out of touch from the GI Joe and even Transformer community for quite a while. You were doing other stuff, writing TV and editing comic companies and all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, I worked at a film distribution company as head of acquisitions. I ran a film festival in Vermont. Yeah, I did a lot of other things. I mean, after I left Sunbow, a couple of years later, maybe 4 years later, I got a phone call from Doug Booth, who was the story editor on G.I. Joe at Deke, and he asked me to write a couple episodes. So that was really the last association I had with G.I. Joe at all, and I wasn't really aware of the fan community at all.
When Brian Sauer, the showrunner for Assembly Required, I think he saw you at the Toronto Transformers Con. I cannot think of the name of it, I believe, as a guest. He reached out to you, right?
Well, actually, no. If he was at TFCon Toronto, which was my very first Transformer convention, we didn't meet each other. It wasn't, but I was aware. But once I had done that, I decided that I wanted to do more because I had a great time meeting fans, learning about more about. It seems like, well, it didn't seem like the fans know more about Transformers and GI Joe than I know. I don't. My knowledge is limited to the stuff that I worked on, and so I started reaching out to other conventions. And the one convention that on Facebook that impressed me was Assembly Required because of the graphics.
Oh yeah.
That's all I knew. And so I contacted Brian, as I did other people, and just said, this is who I am. This is what I did when I worked at Sunbow. I'm available if you're interested. And Brian called me up, and we had a nice conversation, and he didn't know about. I guess he knew about Cold Slither, but he didn't know about Special Mission Brazil. He didn't know about the coil, so he said, well, this year our theme is Dreadnoks, and we're devoting one night to Cold Slither. And so we both agreed it would be a really missed opportunity for both of us if I wasn't there. And so that's how it happened.
Yeah, and that was such a fun weekend. I got to meet you and talk to you quite a bit and stuff like that. And then they gave out this demo of your song on here, and then some remixes and stuff like that. Cold Slither demo as a free gift for the dinner. Which, if anybody's watching this and you want to go to Assembly Required, make sure you get the dinner because you always get free swag that is exclusive to the show. Just a hint, but this is really fun, and I've listened to it a couple times. I actually was able to get 2. So I wasn't supposed to have 2, but I ended up with 2.
The more the better. And I want to take the opportunity to give a shout out to Chad Baker, because he wrote a couple of extra verses, because the song is so short,
right,
that are brilliant and seamlessly work with the verses that I wrote. So kudos to him and the band that he and Brian had put together to record the song.
Yeah, it's really cool. I really enjoy it. But the takeaway is that there is a huge contingent of fans that love that episode and love what you did with the Dreadnoks and those characters. And it's kind of one of those things that you just don't know until you get involved with the fan bases and get involved with the conventions and see what's going on. That the fans have appreciation for things that uh, only the fans love. The artists and the writers and stuff. Sometimes these are throwaway. They're doing their work. They're uh, going through this stuff week by week by week. And I've talked to obviously Flint Dilley and Buzz Dixon and you guys didn't see a lot of that response when you were doing this work in the 80s.
Oh yeah, because obviously the internet didn't really exist, certainly not in the way it does today. And unlike comic book companies, we didn't get any fan mail. I mean, maybe Hasbro did, but we certainly didn't. So the only thing we knew was how we were doing in the ratings, and I think we had 5 shows in the top 5. So that's all we knew. So we didn't. Well, the one thing we definitely didn't do was we didn't write down to the audience like we would have had to do on previous shows we worked on, especially the Saturday morning cartoons. But primarily, we were writing scripts to sort of entertain ourselves and entertain each other. At least, those of us who were working in the Sunbow office. All the freelancers, they were working from home and doing their own thing. So, a lot of times we just sit around and say, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And then, that would become a story idea.
It has been, it was inspired by, I shouldn't say, how should I say that? You inspired a huge fan base of people around the world with the work you did on G.I. Joe and Sunbow. And so it's still paying dividends to this day in maybe not financially. Well, let me clarify, maybe not
Yeah,
financially, but
not for us.
not for you guys, but the fan base are still coming to you, giving you customs of things you created, and the fan base is made up of all kind of creative people. Obviously, the ones that worked on that Cold Slither demo, people that are giving you action figure customs, and I'm sure you've seen art and stuff that people have done for you, and even the exclusive chase card of Zartan, Cold Clitter Zartan on, I think, yeah, wasn't it? Maybe it wasn't a chase. Maybe it was the Captain Claymore that was the chase. I'm misspeaking there. But regardless, Brian Sauer did a
Yes.
card back of Zartan as Cold Slither. I don't know if he did the other 3
He,
Dreadnoks or
he,
not.
he not only did he do all 4 characters, but
Oh,
he did one for the director of the music video as well.
Oh, I
And
didn't
then,
know he did that.
And then, of course, he did the Captain Claymore one too.
So, but there's all these fans that grew up with this stuff that are inspired by you, that have visited you and talked to you over the years and showed you a lot of the things that did. Because we have a huge creative contingent of this fan base that is just, some of the stuff they do is just incredible. I cannot do any of that stuff. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. This is the level at which my creativity is. But some of those people are at Hasbro. Some of those people are at Super 7. And so they just announced this week that they are going to homage Cold Slither as classified figures for an exclusive San Diego Comic-Con item. So there's the 4 members with a lot of their equipment. May not be all their equipment. There may be more that's not in this picture. This is just a render by Hasbro. I have to give credit to Hasbro for this render. But from what I can tell, and I'm sure you've seen pictures, they look absolutely fantastic. Now I'm showing these a little bit out of order.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, they look great.
I think they've taken a little bit of license with some of this stuff. Like they put flames on things that didn't have flames, and they're adding different equipment that was not in the episode, and they're going to be in a cool box that's going to have a stage where you open it up. It's a theater that opens up, and they're standing on the stage,
Wow.
and so the packaging on this stuff is absolutely, there's Zartan, absolutely phenomenal. The technology and the stuff that they can do, but obviously for them to go to these details, this length, they must have had to reach out to you and talk to you about this.
Well, you would think so, but the truth is they didn't.
Wow.
Um, which I don't know whether I should be surprised or not. But I mean, there's nobody at Hasbro who was there when I worked at Sunbow. I did hear like a week or two before we did Joe Fest, I was at Robo Toy Fest, and there were a couple of people there who claimed to have reliable sources at Hasbro and told me that something like this was coming.
Oh.
And again, that might have been my second GI Joe show. So all this is new to me, and I don't know what to how much to believe the rumors that go around, and I kind of forgot about it. And then at Joe Fest, I met Brian Flynn at Super 7, and even though you haven't talked about it yet, and he let me know that they were planning to do a Cold Slither Zartan. And but while he said he would keep me in the loop, and maybe we'd do some, he'd involve me in some promotion, I hadn't heard anything. Yes, there you go. I hadn't heard anything from him since. So I had no sense of when this thing was going to be announced. And so 2 days ago?
Yep, 2 days ago.
Yeah, I was as surprised as everyone else when the Hasbro announcement came out. And yeah, my messages on Facebook and Instagram were blowing up. So
Well,
yeah, pretty cool. And I hope, when it comes time for the release that both Hasbro and Super 7 will want to involve me somehow, but we'll see.
And I think they probably will, because they've been very good about inviting people that are still around to be involved in fan events, pulse cons, whatever. They've done it with Sergeant Slaughter. They've done it with Ron Rudat when they did the His Tank exclusive Ron Rudat choice deco, whatever. He was involved in that, and he helped them do that. And they would be complete idiots if they didn't include the person that wrote the episode that made all of us fans so in love with this. It would be absolutely ridiculous. But there's a gentleman on here that's watching. His name is Fun Bobby. So Fun Bobby, there is a Hasbro classified wave of Cold Slither figures coming out for San Diego Comic-Con. That's what this episode is about, and that's what we're talking about. So go back to the beginning of the episode and try to catch up on that. I will show it again here for your pleasure. Just so you can see. There they are. These are the complete Cold Slither 4-pack San Diego Comic-Con exclusives. What was I saying? So the fact that Hasbro is doing the entire set, fact that people have wanted O-ring versions of Cold Slither since the 80s. And since Super 7 finally announced last Christmas, a year ago, Christmas time, they were getting the O-ring license. People have been sending, I'm sure, Brian Flynn, like letters and notes and choices, and it was uh, obvious that they were going to do characters that no one has ever seen before. We just got the Fatal Fluffies. We just got Ramar and a few other versions on Wave 1. And the next wave is going to include Zartan from Cold Slither as an O-ring inspired Reaction Plus, and it also includes animated style Wild Bill, animated style Snake Eyes, and a Winter Gear Cobra Commander for all you Reaction Plus fans. The next wave has been announced. So Brian Flynn is really a cool guy. So I think that's awesome that he reached out to you and said that he was going to do that. That must have made you really like giddy or proud or whatever when he told you that.
Well, certainly I was honored and it was flattering. You know, it's still the idea that anything that I created for the show has become popular is still surreal to me, because I was convinced, even when I was writing Cold Slither, that it would ultimately be everybody's least favorite episode because it was so wacky.
I think there's a contingent. That old saying, the silent minority and the vocal major. No, it's the vocal minority and the silent majority plays into this, because there's a lot of fans that love this stuff but never get on social media, never say anything, but they're huge fans of it. So it kind of is weird and skewed. You don't get the truth of the matter until you really get in the middle and you go to conventions and you see these fans. Because I've been to several events, 3 events with you, and there's always people online to talk to you. And now
Yeah.
you're doing reinterpretations of scripts, and you're doing other parts of this brand, comics and other things. I don't know how much you can talk about, but I know for a fact you're working in other parts of this brand, and that's got to be flattering as well.
Yeah, it is. I mean, going back to your earlier comment, even when I'm at a convention and I see somebody wearing a Cold Slither t-shirt walking past me, it's still like, oh, I can't believe that this sort of became a real thing for people. But yeah, how the sort of feature-length version of the script that we did the reading for at Assembly Required came about was it started out as an 8-page comic book story that Brian had asked me to write. In fact, he asked me to write 4, 2 Transformers, 2 G.I. Joe. It was going to be a promotional comic book at the event that ultimately didn't happen. So when he also asked me to write a script for a reading, I thought, well, I'll just take, because the theme was Destro and the Iron Grenadiers, that's what my 8-page story was. So I thought, well, I'll just expand that into like a half-hour show. So I also did the same thing for one of the 8-page Transformers script was the origin of DevCon. And I took that with me to the script with me to TFCon Baltimore. And I had one guy there who's a big Transformer fan, big DevCon fan, said, "Oh, you should turn this into a full-length comic book, and I'll help fund it." So that's kind of on my plate. Greg Brown from DFW Joe show was at Assembly Required. He loved the script reading, and he asked me to do one for next June. And he wanted it to be about the coil.
Oh, great.
So,
Well, be careful about the coil. We want to see if Hasbro is going to pick that idea up if they ever hear it. So you might want to put that in your back pocket in case you get picked up as a producer for the third season of Sunbow animated G.I. Joe.
Now you're talking about something that's pie in the sky, or you're talking about something that might be happening?
Oh no, I have no idea. I just want to make sure that you're careful about things, because you might want to use them down the road if something happens. Look at what happened with X-Men '97. So
true. Although, you know, I don't know who would get the rights to do a new G.I. Joe animated series, and based on my experience with Hasbro in 2010 when they were doing a G.I. Joe series, I had a couple of meetings with them, but ultimately, you know, it felt like they were never going to ask me to write anything. They were just kind of humoring me, which I was kind of offended by, but just sort of let it go. But because, and I haven't seen them all, I only know about them from people like you and other fans I've met in the last year, not quite a year and a half, that other people have taken the idea of the coil and run with it in their own way.
Yeah.
So it turns out we're not going to do a script reading.
Oh.
Not all the guests who will be at DFW show will be available to actually participate, because I was going to include their characters as well, plus Captain Claymore, because Greg asked me to do that. But I thought, well, this will give me, even though, as we've discussed before, there's not very much I remember about it. I don't have access to the original material I wrote, but I thought it would give me an opportunity to kind of put my stamp on it again.
Yeah.
And write it as though it would be a recreation and reimagining of what I might have done had I written the pilot episode. And I think my plan was to do a 5-part miniseries for season 3. But so I thought, well, I can go back and sort of recreate that, and then I'll put my imprint on what the creator of the coil, decided what the coil was going to be about. So
did you ever find all that missing material that you were trying to find?
No, it's still in storage in Vermont, but I'm also, you know, utilizing my sensibilities, my contemporary sensibilities. So I have, well, I think I put the notebook away, but I got a notebook like that thick of notes of what I want to do. And I already wrote like first 4 or 5 pages, which is kind of a recap of the scene that already existed in the final episode of season 2 that introduces the coil. So it'd be like a flashback.
Gotcha. Well, the company that has the license to the G.I. Joe comics at the moment, Skybound, is Robert Kirkman's company, and he did Walking Dead and he did the Invincible animated series. So I feel that there's a very good chance that some sort of content will be created by Robert Kirkman. Like I said, I don't know anything. I'm just using my intuition, and you can put the puzzle pieces together and create a picture. I don't know. He's been very good about going back and talking to other creators that worked on G.I. Joe. He's got Larry Hama back. He's done other stuff with silent issues and all kinds of fun things. They're doing, in fact, a Cold Slither comic that's going to be releasing at the same time, and an LP at the same time as San Diego Comic-Con with this San Diego Comic-Con box set.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I'm kind of floored that it's not just one thing; it's four things, all cold
Right.
sleep related. And and while I probably shouldn't admit I haven't read them, although I've seen some pages people have posted online. It does appear to me that Kirkman is a fan of at least the episode I wrote introducing DevCon, because he has used some of the other characters I created in Void Rivals. But again, nobody at Skybound reached out to me regarding the Cold Slither comic book. But I would love to meet him someday and have just a general conversation with him about.
I would guess he's going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. I don't know if you have access to go to San Diego Comic-Con, being in California or not. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's a depending on traffic, it's a 2 to 4 hour drive. But I'm hoping that between Hasbro and Super 7 and maybe even Skybound, that they'll invite me down and want me to participate in autograph sessions.
I would hope so. It would be a travesty if that didn't happen. I would be sad for you, very sad for you, because it's a perfect opportunity for them to do something like that. So please, Hasbro, not that you're probably watching this, but if you do happen to come across this, please. So I was going to ask something, and I forgot my question. So yeah, so the inspiration, it's going on still, and it's incredible, all the different aspects of the fandom that this has touched, and now we're going to have that opportunity to get all kinds of different stuff. I think a couple of years ago somebody did like a pin set, and there was some other stuff. So there's been merchandising for Cold Slither for a couple of years now, I believe.
Yeah, that was. Hang on, I'm just trying to get more light in here. Maybe not that much. It doesn't make any difference, I guess. That was Icon Heroes had done what looked like a record album box set, or at least a 45 box set, with these brilliant covers by. Now I'm embarrassed. I can't remember his name.
It's okay.
He invited me down to a convention in Carlsbad last fall sometime, and had me sign the paintings that he did for them, because he still had the original artwork for sale, which I wish I could afford to buy, because they're great. Because he had done 2 different covers, so they ultimately ended up doing first issue release, and then when that sold out, they did another one using a different piece of artwork.
Well, that's cool. I think that's great. That's exactly what I'm saying. These people, they knew who you are, they know what you've done, and they know the impact that you've had on this brand over the decades. And that's just one piece of the impact. You've done so many other things. The DEF CON was probably Daniel Warren Johnson, who's writing the current Skybound Transformers. Man, is he doing a great job. And when I saw DEF CON, I'm like, holy crap, they obviously like Charles Michael Hill, because who would use that character? He's a very obscure character. He's been made into a toy, but other than that, there wasn't a lot with it. It's a cool character.
So DevCon is in a comic book now?
Isn't that what you just told me a little while ago? He was in Transformers?
I'm waiting to see. I'm expecting that he will be, because other characters I created in that episode, he has put into the Void, at least the Void Rivals. And then I was told that there was in the current storyline of the Transformers book, there's a Starscream's Brigade reunion. Yeah. Starscream and Bruticus. But I haven't seen any pages from that yet.
Oh, okay. So maybe I jumped the gun on that then.
Yeah. Because they've used Lord Gaikoni, they've used Bosch, they've used Slizardo in Void Rivals. I'm sort of expecting that DevCon will ultimately appear.
So yeah, so that definitely means that Skybound appreciates your role in the brands, both Transformers and GI Joe, and they appreciate what you did. Obviously, if they're doing it with care and with thought, and obviously with a promotion, because we have never had a concerted effort by Hasbro to do this kind of event, to have an LP, to have a comic, to have an exclusive toy and another toy from another company, all in a rollout at the same time. This is the first time that they've done that. So there had to be a lot of thought process. So there's
Yeah, which does beg the question: is why didn't they reach out to me? Although when DevCon was released summer of 2023, I didn't know about that until my first night at TFCon Toronto, and somebody told me about it, and that was the first I heard about it. And that was the thing. I was convinced Hasbro would never, ever acknowledge his existence because he wasn't part of the toy line. He wasn't created by them. And when I created him, it was a simple fact of nobody told. I needed a character to be a bounty hunter.
right.
And when I went down the list of all the Autobots and all the Decepticons, none of them worked. And nobody told me I couldn't create my own Transformer.
And the fact of the matter is, Hasbro has been very good about homaging and doing stuff like that for years. They've given Larry Hama a lot of characters like Quinn. That was only a comic book character. Larry Hama created the Baroness. I'm sure you're not aware of that, but
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, he created the Baroness. Look at how popular the Baroness is.
Well, here's a question that hopefully you can answer. So while working at Sunbow, and I'm pretty sure everyone else who worked at Sunbow, we never read the Marvel G.I. Joe or the Transformer comic books because we didn't want to subconsciously, borrow any of their story ideas and make them our own.
Larry did the same thing.
And I had learned from Larry when I met him for the first time at Assembly Required last fall, and Bob Budiansky last year at a convention, that they did the same thing. They didn't watch the shows.
Right.
So, having said that, at Christmas time, I thought, well, there's so much about the G.I. Joe universe I'm not aware of, and I'm preparing myself to write this yet again another new script focused on the coil. I said maybe it's time I start reading the comics. So I bought the paperback of the first 50 issues.
Wow.
And there's a character I keep stumbling across I'm not familiar with at all, and his name is Clutch.
Clutch. He was in the very first original OG-13. He's the driver of the Vamp.
Okay, but he was never I don't remember ever having access to him in the animated series. Was he ever a figure?
He was originally in the OG-13 as a figure, and then they redid him as version 2 beige with the Vamp Mark II. But both of those versions was in the Sunbow animated series. I'm not sure what year you started on. Was it year 1 or year 2?
I was that's a good question. I started writing, I think, in year 2, but I think I was there for year 1. But I just have no memory of that character whatsoever.
He was definitely in there for year 1 because he was in the Mass Device miniseries. I know that for a fact. There was a 2-parter where they went to a parallel universe where Cobra ruled the world or whatever. He was in that because he was friends with Steeler when they went over to the parallel universe. So I know he was in that 2-parter. I'm not an expert on who appeared in every episode, but I know he was in those 7 episodes at the very least.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me is because I used to supervise all the recording sessions, I have no memory of any actor ever playing a character named Clutch.
He had like a whiny, like high pitched kind of voice, kind of like Shipwreck, but a little bit less gravelly. He had almost not Southern accent, but you could tell he had a twang.
Okay.
I don't know who that was, but yes, yep, he was in the OG-13. He was in the comic. He was in the first year at least, and he was in the first 5-part Mass Device miniseries. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Yeah.
So where was I? So yeah. So the inspiration and stuff like that. Have there been stories that fans have come up to you that have really like made you pause? Like this impacted my life. I went into the armed forces, or this character really made my child's name, or this or that. Can you maybe give a couple of stories about some of the impact the fans had with this stuff?
Yeah, I don't think that has happened to me yet with regarding GI Joe. It has happened to me with Transformers and the one episode of Gem that I wrote under protest. And surprisingly, you know, well, you don't know much about Transformers, but obviously everyone loves the Dev character. Everyone loves Starscream's Brigade. Everyone loves the return of Optimus Prime, both 1 and 2, and I wrote the second part, which was the final episode of that season, which brings Optimus Prime back to life. But I wrote a few others, and one of them, which was my favorite to write, was called The Burden Hardest to Bear. And most people, for a while, nobody would talk to me about it, or nobody would ever mention that to me as being one of their favorites. But then gradually people would come up to me and said how the message in the story, and I didn't mean for it to be a message, was really impactful and important to them and helped them at that stage of their life, and something they carried forward into the future. With the Gem episode, which I don't know if you're familiar with or not.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. A lot of people have told me that around the time that first aired, they had lost their mother.
Oh,
and
man.
So the episode helped them, comfort them, but also, you know, console them in their grieving. So again, you know, not the kind of things I was thinking about when I wrote these episodes.
Right.
It was, you know, more of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? With Gem, I was trying to come up with a story that Hasbro wouldn't want me to write, and they loved it. And that was, maybe I've explained this to you before. In addition to my contract as a producer for Transformers and G.I. Joe, I had a separate contract that guaranteed me a minimum number of script assignments for the length of that contract. And I guess getting close to the end of it in '86, I think I had 3 scripts left to write. And I either hadn't pitched anything, or the few things I pitched, you know, got rejected. So I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to get paid not to write. Well, Sunbow did not want to pay me not to write something. So I was informed I was going to be writing an episode of Gem, and I was informed I was going to be writing the last Transformer episode of I guess it was the 3rd season. So, and that I didn't mind doing because we knew what a big stink was caused by the movie killing off Optimus Prime.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so we had to fix that.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, I was not happy about writing the Jim episode. And, just like with Cold Sliver, where I was making fun of heavy metal music, I was trying to write something with Jim that wouldn't be approved, that Hasbro wouldn't like.
Oh man.
Um, and, it backfired on me. And now it's the one episode that makes every Jim fan cry.
Uh, I've spoken with a lot of you guys, Buzz, you, Flint, and every one of you tried that, and none of you got away with it. It's so funny that they picked up on those things that you guys didn't really care for or didn't really try at, and it just was coincidence, or maybe it was convenience, or they really needed something, so they were like, we could just work this rework this a little bit and use it, or I don't know, but I find that really hilarious.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I mean, maybe by default Hasbro got copies of everything we wrote, but they didn't really have a hand in making any of those decisions. So it was weird when occasionally they'd stick their head above water and have something to say about it. For example, when I wrote Starscream's Brigade, the original title was called 30 Seconds Over Megatron, which was just a play off of the title of a World War II film, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. And I get a fax or a phone call from, the Sunbow office in New York and said, "Oh, Hasbro doesn't like this title. You got to change it." And I said, "Well, why?" They said, "Oh, it sounds too much like a war show." And my immediate response, I'll drop the expletive, was, "Have they seen the show?"
Yeah, exactly.
So somebody, and I don't know if it was at Marvel Productions, took it upon themselves to change the title of it. I saw somewhere it was listed as The Mutiny of Starscream or some crap like that. And so I finally caved in because I was trying to stand my ground. I said, "No, I'm not going to change it." And so ultimately I changed it. I just took the title of another World War II film called The Devil's Brigade and changed that to Starscream Brigade. And then everybody was happy.
I've spoken to lots of writers and stuff over the years. Writers tend to be a lot smarter than producers and executives, and they have gotten so many things over their heads that to this day, a lot of these producers and executives have no clue things that were included and stuff like that. All kinds of Easter eggs and things like that. I love that. I think that's fun. It makes it better for us fans and the fan base and the hobby and everything like that to see all that stuff. But the Gem episode has a lot of correlation because people have teamed up Gem and the holograms and the villains from Gem with Cold Slither and the G.I. Joe band, and they've kind of did their own uh, imagination of writing, these fan type writings, and they put them together. And because it was all Sunbow, it's technically in the same universe because Hector Ramirez is in
Mhm.
all the shows, so he connects all these shows as
Yeah,
one universe.
right. He's
So
the connective tissue.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
And I did see, I guess it was some convention exclusive, but there was an alternate G.I. Joe cover that featured at least Gem, but we'll say Gem and the holograms and Cold Slither, which I thought was really cool because when I was working on the show, that idea never occurred to me.
well, yeah, because things didn't cross over in those days. Today, everything crosses over because it helps bump the ratings, and whatever you can do to bump the ratings of whatever it is you're trying to do, make Marvel and DC crossover, bump the ratings of comics. Have the DC multiverse crossover on CW, bump your ratings.
Mhm.
Crossover different universes, all that stuff. You know, it makes it so Hasbro's tried it a couple of times. IDW tried to do the combined Hasbro universe with a lot of the properties, and now Skybound, obviously with the Energon universe, has combined all these properties. I think Skybound's probably done a better job of combining all these properties,
Yeah.
but I would not be shocked if there's a cameo of Gem and the Holograms in that Cold Slither comic. I'd be willing to bet you.
Well, I'm looking forward to learning more about it. I assume it's probably, you know, it's already written,
Oh yeah.
pencil, ink, colored, all that stuff. Just waiting for its release in July in San Diego.
Um, it is always a wonderful pleasure to talk with you, Michael. Whether it be in person or in this venue. And I always appreciate you joining me. You've just, like you said earlier, joined me 2 or 3 times on different discussions, and I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you having me on. It's always great doing this with you, hanging out with you, you know, at an event. So I'm more than happy to come as often as you'd like to have me.
Wonderful. So you touched on a few projects you've got going on. Uh, is there anywhere that the fans out there will be able to see you in the soon seen future? You said you're going to be at DFW.
Right.
Um,
So next month, the end of next month, I'll be at Toylanta
oh, cool.
in Duluth, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. And then in June, I'll be doing the DFW show in Texas and BotCon in Indiana, Fort Wayne, I think. And that's all I have nailed down so far.
Ah, well, that's great. I don't know if I'm going to have the time off to go to Duluth because I have something else that I'm doing for about 2 weeks in March. But I would love to go back to Joe Lanta just to see you.
And hopefully, Brett will invite me back for that too, which I think will be September this year instead of August. Because it happened last year. It happened on the weekend of the hurricane.
Yeah, and it got I think canceled or delayed or something. I'm not sure.
Well, we still went on because the next day, by I think by 9 o'clock, stopped raining and wind blowing and all of that. So all of us who were there were able to put it on. The problem is anyone who had planned to travel on that day from elsewhere
Right,
had a lot of problems because of the conditions of the roads.
right. And so, is there anything that people can look forward to? Projects that you can talk about that we can buy to support you.
Well, I did create, interestingly enough, last year, and I was only able to take them. I only had them in time to take to assembly required. Is I created some Cold Slither, one night only, 40th anniversary reunion concert posters.
Oh, cool.
So now they're even more relevant now with this big announcement. So I will be taking them certainly to Toylanta, and I'll be taking to Dallas, the DFW show. Obviously, no reason to bring them to BotCon. So if somebody wants to stop by and pick up a signed copy of one of those,
I don't know. I don't know. I think you might want to bring him to BotCon. There is a lot of crossover fan bases. I love Transformers. I don't know as much about it as other Transformers people. I do get the comics, so I do love Transformers. I'm just not as huge of a collector of it. So there are crossover fans of all this stuff. So you might want to bring that there.
Well, if I have extra room in my suitcase, then I'll definitely give that some consideration.
So again, thank you very much. I want to also thank the viewers out there that are watching. And if you want to see really cool deep dives into GI Joe lore, different topics, to make a suggestion in the chat below, and I will take those under consideration. Do all the things that you need to do out there. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel so we can grow and we can keep bringing this excellent content, excellent guests like Michael Charles Hill to you, and you can learn all kinds of neat things about the history of G.I. Joe Sunbow animation. And thank you very much again, and yo, go!
Thank you.